All right, so let's do the next part of the gallery. Okay, so I've got my windows set to show all of my orthographic views here so that I can see everything. I'm going to start with the basic spotlight pattern in the back, and then I'll do the fabric overlay. So from a top view, I'm going to go ahead and actually just hide everything. So selecting everything and hiding it. And then I'm going to just make my spotlight and then bring everything back and move it into position. So spotlight, we type it, and we can adjust a lot of things later on if we want to. So I'm going to just drag it out a certain distance and then make sure ortho is turned on up here for Mac, down here for PC. Switch to this view so I can get a straight forward spotlight. Okay, and we can see that shape of it because we're in wireframe. So if I click on it, now I can rotate my spotlight. If I turn ortho off, I can kind of tweak it a little bit down. Okay, so looking at it in perspective, now I want 3 of these, and I want them to cross beams. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to copy, and I'm going to move with ortho on. So I just hit shift to make that happen. And put it about that far apart. Then I'm just going to mirror this one over so I know it's the same. So I'm going to select it and type mirror. Go to my point here because my snaps are on. With ortho on, it should flip nice and straight, and click. And then I want these beams to cross right there. So I'm going to select this one and use my gumball to rotate. I guess I could just delete this one. I should have mirrored that one afterward. So now I'm going to move it over. I want those circles in the center to overlap. Those are going to be kind of our hot spot. Okay. And I'm just dragging this single point by clicking, and then click on just that point, and then I can move it because I want the distances to be the same. And then if I click on this, I can move these in to make it a really narrow focus, which later on I might want to change. I don't know. We'll see how it works when we render it. Okay. Now I'm going to mirror this over. This base point right there, and click. While I've got them here, I'm going to go ahead and change the colors. So click on one, and then under properties, we've got, so properties looks like that right there. My intensity is way up. And then I'm going to go to web colors here, basically, is what this is, I think, or just primaries. And I'm going to do red, green, and blue. So this one I'm going to make red. Okay. This one I'm going to make blue, I think. There's an order to it. I don't remember what it was, but we'll figure it out if it's not working. Let me just do, since it's RGB, why don't we just do red, green, and then blue here. Okay. So that's blue, that's green, and that's red. All right, so let's now select these and put them on a new layer. And I'm going to call this layer light effect. Change the color, make it that green. Then I'm going to got to remember to move them to that layer. So select it all, right click, and move objects to this layer, or copy objects to the layer. I think it's what it says on the PC. Something different though. All right, next we're going to bring everything back by just right clicking there. From our top view, select these 3 objects, and I'm going to move them to the back of the gallery. Rotate. Whoops. I'm going to rotate, but I'm going to type 45. Oops. 90, sorry. Oh, and then 180 to flip them all the way back around. Okay, there we go. All right, so I kind of want them hitting the wall. And then I'm going to actually scale them in some. All right, now I'm going to look at them from the front view because, yes, we can see that they're way up in the ceiling here. So let's select these and move them down to about right there. Okay, awesome. So that's making those lights. Let's go ahead and see how they look. So I'm going to go to my kiosks in the back view. I'm going to go to my camera here, which I've got my kiosks in the back set up as a view right there. I can just manipulate it. Oh, and I realize I don't have this on a different layer yet, so let me just fix that real quick. All right, now let's switch to rendered view and see what it looks like. And it does look like we have a white light pattern back there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try rendering this and see what it looks like, so I'm going to put you on pause. Actually, let me just show you my render settings real quick. Render properties here. So we can lower this down, maybe do 100 DPI. And background solid color's fine. Ground plane. We don't need a ground plane because we have a ground plane. And I'll turn off that. Leave the sun and skylight on. All right. Let's give those settings a try. Okay, so after rendering it, I noticed that we had some issues that we needed to fix. So I came back in here and looked at these and decided that I wanted to change some of the parameters. So I moved the lights closer together, and I also scaled them in a bit individually. And then I came back up here under properties, so under properties up here, and changed the intensity down a little bit of the red, shadow intensity to a midpoint, and then the spotlight hardness, I put it all the way up, and that makes it so that this is like almost like a focused light. Then we want to make sure we've got the green at 100% intensity and the blue. You got to play with the intensities a little bit to get the effect the way you want it, but shadow intensity at 50 and spotlight hardness all the way solid there. And a lot of these lighting settings that we're talking about do carry over to different programs, which is good to make you think not just about using Rhino, but using any other software in the future. So let's go ahead now and add a little bit more lighting. So I'm going to add a point light, and go ahead and put it right here at this end point here. And then what I want to do is I'm going to move it to the middle here. Middle-ish. And then I'm going to go to a right view. And I want to make sure that my point light shadow intensity is a little bit lower so that there's more gradation in the shadows. Let's go back to a top view. Sorry, let's go to a right view here. And the other thing that we want to make sure is that it is below the level of our draping net. We could put some more up in the net to get some cool reflections happening, but I'm just doing the basics here. So now what I want to do is I want to copy and paste this. So I'm just going to go Command-C, Command-V, Command-V, and that's probably enough. So I'm going to then move one to about here, and move one back this way a little bit. Hold on a second, I'm getting a little... There we go. My Zoom was acting up. Sorry about that. Okay. So I've got these three lights, and I'm looking at them in relationship because I want to leave some darkness over here to allow this lighting effect back here to work. So for now, I'm going to try this out. So I'm going to go back into kiosks in the back. Actually, I've got my named view here I set. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to come in and do some render properties. And I'm going to make sure that I've got no environment set under my 360 environment, and I'm not going to use a ground plane. So I think these are all pretty good. Okay, and then the other thing I want to do is go up and go File, Select, or Edit, Select, Objects, select my lights. Sorry, right there. And then go into my layers here and change, move my object to this layer. So I have all my layers with the lights on it on one layer, and I can turn them off. That way, under my render settings also, I can have use lights on layers that are off when rendering, and still kind of maintain a little bit of a capability of moving through the space here. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it a render and see what happens, and then we'll move on to the next part. All right, I can see here it's going to be all blown out. So now I'm going to just go ahead and stop my rendering. Then what I'm going to do is go to a top view, turn my lights back on, and select the three lights I've got here. Bring the intensity down. Go back to my view. And this time I'm just going to do a render preview. And you can see that what happens when you get that one light inside of the netting there. It's kind of cool looking. All right, so I think I could still bring down these lights intensity a little bit more. Let's do another render preview. Okay, I think that's going to be good enough for now. So that's lighting this space up. The next thing I want to do is go to this portion and make the drapery. Okay, so to make our drapery, what we're going to do is we're going to create a pole, and we're going to do that by drawing a line. And I'm going to go from this point to this point, and then I'm going to type pipe and select. Okay, so I've already got this selected, so pipe, and then I'm going to do a radius of 0.5, enter, and enter again, and then enter one more time to make the pipe. So if you didn't have the same settings as me before hitting enter each time there, just check my settings. And then I'm going to go to a right view, and now what is selected is the line there, so I'll just delete that curve. Now I've got this, and I was lucky enough to get it right on the point there, but you might have had a problem with that. If so, you can just lift it up and down. So next I'm going to go ahead and let me turn off my lights. And I've also got my back ceiling and front ceiling turned off here too. And I'm now going to turn off the netting layer. Okay. So this is our pole that we're going to use to drape over. And basically, to drape, all you got to do is type drape. And then from a top view, you have to be in a top view, you're going to basically draw a rectangle. And you can make your own spacing up, 20, whatever you want to do. Try different ones, and you'll have different effects. So what this command does is it basically just drops a surface over. And those of you who saw the video I made about using drapery previously will be aware of this. So I'm going to just go from this point here and try to make it kind of symmetrical. Long, narrow band, and then release. Go into perspective here, and you can see it's not precise as far as its location onto the pole. It doesn't drape right over the pole, but I don't really care about that. So I'm going to isolate it, then go into shaded here, and I can rebuild this because it's a surface with 10 by 10, so it has less control points. Then I can stretch it, lift it up. Probably needs to be, that's probably good. It's actually fine to be almost on the line there. And then I can go to a top view on it. For some reason it's not quite symmetrical, but I can turn my control points on. And then I can grab from left to right, grab from left to right, every other grouping here. And pull them out. Can even do it the opposite over here. Just be creative. So I'm grabbing these points, and you'll see what it does if you don't already guess. kind of starts to make the fabric wavy. And, you know, if that's not enough control points, you can rebuild again and maybe make it 30 by 30. Then you can come in and actually do a little bit more detail work, pull out, you know, different sections to kind of manipulate the fabric. All right, so I'm going to keep playing with it for a minute, and then once I'm ready, I'll come back and we'll do materials on it. All right, so now kind of been forming it a bit. I'm going to squish it in some. And I think I actually like this side better, so I'm just going to flip it 180. And then let's go ahead and show all the objects, right-clicking on the light bulb. Okay. So from a top view here now, let's do a few things. Let's squeeze some of this into smaller fabric sheets, maybe even this way some. And then copy them around. And I'm just kind of doing that haphazardly. You might want to spend some time making it look cool. And then I can change the scale again on some of these. Even make some float in space. Yeah, it just looks like curtains, but you know, you get the idea. You can make something far more interesting in just a couple more minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to call this a new layer, add a layer here, and call it curtain. Sorry to minimize the artistry, but that's what mine look like. So now select them all and move objects to this layer. Should we make it a fun color? Yes, we should. Okay, cool. So now we want to add a material to this. And the way I'm thinking we do this is we just use one of the existing materials and manipulate it a little bit. So let's go to our material library here, add a material, import material from library, and then under textiles here, you should have a bunch of different stuff. And if you don't have all this stuff, you need to maybe type the command download library textures, and it should download all those textures to your computer. Okay, import from library, and then textiles. And I'm going to just come down here to white fabric, open it up, and it's right there. Click on it. Click on the fabric, click on edit, and then it brings this up. Save this file to your computer, and then we're going to open it with Adobe Photoshop. Okay, and then from here, all I want to do is go to 3D. Oops. Or go to filter. Oh, it's not available. Well, let's save it as the JPEG. So I'm going to just try this out. Save it as a JPEG. Save it to your desktop or wherever. Close it down. Or just close the file so we don't have to close Photoshop, and then there we go. Filter 3D, generate normal map. Or actually bump map, I'm sorry. Cancel. Go for this one we want, because it's Rhino, we'll do filter 3D bump map or height map. Okay. So we'll use that. Okay. And then we're going to save this. Again, you probably want to save this someplace other than your desktop on your computer because it's going to reference this file. So maybe save it in your own little private texture folder associated with this file. All right, let me open up my Rhino again here. And this time I'm going to add a custom material, okay? And then I'm going to increase the transparency on it quite a bit. I'm going to go to my bump map and I'm going to assign that file. Open. Okay. Let's go into render and see what it looks like. And you can see the texture on it might need to be tiled up a bit. So we'll come back in here, repeat it 10 by 10. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit more subtle that way. So I did that, of course, by going into the dot, 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 or no, not that, sorry. Clicking on white fabric here, and that brings up this repeat 10 times, 10 times. Okay. So then let's do a click on the custom material again, and let's try a different color. Okay, because that's why we've got a color now is assigned to something other than the bump map. So this is actually, you know, again, very similar to how you're going to be texturing things in other programs too. So the color map and the bump map are different, and that's how we created this custom color. The nice thing is I can just duplicate this, and then I can change the color on each one pretty easily and still maintain that same texture configuration. And I think the transparency should be pretty high up, actually. That's too high. Okay, so apply the rest of the colors and we'll look at how it renders. All right, so this is just about rendered. You can see it's got a little bit of texture to it. I might have overdone it with my waviness on the fabric. We probably want a little sleeker look to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and stop this. And that's kind of the way we do fabric and, you know, kind of manipulate materials and the difference between bump maps and different types of rendering options. The last thing maybe you want to be interested in seeing is if I go into my camera view, switch back to my kiosk view here, and then go to my layers. Let's turn back on the ceiling curtain, or the netting, I'm sorry. And I think what I want to try to do here is change my camera's view here. So if I go to set view, set camera, and then go to adjust lens length here, as I zoom out, I get a wider lens for my camera. You see that? So now I can, and it gets a little squirrely, so you don't want to do this all the time. But you can almost fisheye and see a bunch of my view all at once. So let me see if I can rotate it a little bit. And I'll go ahead and give that a render and see what happens. So that's it. That's probably the last thing you wanted to see as far as maybe some ideas for how not only can you create the space, but you can also manipulate the camera lenses so you can change the vantage point, have really wide angle views, really narrow angle views. So those are all kind of parameters that can also be overlaid with different programs, and I think will be beneficial if you can expand on them. Again, we're rendering with Rhino here just to keep it basic. These fundamentals would also lend themselves to other rendering engines. Thank you very much.